President Obama's visit to Ground Zero today was a symbolic turning point in our nation's history. It's a small step toward closure on the attacks of 9/11. It should have also helped to drive a stake through one of the biggest myths in American politics, that Republicans are somehow stronger than Democrats on terrorism and national security. It's a lie the GOP has been foisting on Americans for years. Just take a look at this chart. Since 9/11, Republicans have always had an edge on this issue in the polls, usually by double digits. And before the killing of bin Laden, Republicans tried to exploit this polling advantage on their attacks on President Obama. Among other things, they accused him of dismantling necessary Bush-era anti-terror policies.
President Obama campaigned against it all across the country, and now he's making some choices that, in my mind, will in fact raise the risk to the American people of another attack.
What do you conclude? Do you conclude they're naive, that maybe they don't understand the nature of the war on terror?
Yes, basically.
What do they think? Do they think that the terrorists have all of a sudden become the good guys and changed their minds?
That's not how it worked out, was it? The terrorists wound up getting a bullet in the head. In fact, the GOP has been pushing this propaganda for years. In 2004, John Kerry said he wanted to reduce terrorism to a nuisance, and the Bush-Cheney tag team jumped all over him.
Our goal is not to reduce terror to some acceptable level of nuisance. Our goal is to defeat terror by staying on the offensive.
This is naive and dangerous.
Well, it's all hype. All they ever do is beat their chest and make accusations. So it's time to put this enormous lie to rest once and for all. Number one, the biggest terror strike in U.S. history happened on George W. Bush's watch. And think about this. In the months before 9/11, the CIA warned Bush about a possible attack, but they couldn't get through to him. According to the Washington Post, Bush saw bin Laden as small potatoes and didn't want to, quote, swat at flies. What a terrible mistake that turned out to be. And here's Bush's reaction to the August 2001 memo titled Bin Laden Determined to Strike in U.S. According to reporter Ron Suskind, Bush told the operative who presented that memo to him, quote, all right, you've covered your ass now. And these are the guys that are tough on terror and strong on national security? The guys who ignore warnings and say, oh, you covered your ass, go home, I'm going to stay on vacation? Those are the tough guys? Meanwhile, on the Democratic side, we've seen a steady stream of success. Bill Clinton led the U.S. into Bosnia and Kosovo and took care of both jobs. And just like Obama, Clinton got his man. In that case, the war criminal Slobodan Milosevic. And today, we saw the legacy of Obama's achievement. Does it get any better than giving some degree of closure to the victims of 9/11 by delivering justice on bin Laden's head? So the next time the Republicans talk about how Democrats are soft on national security, understand that it's the sad boast of a kid who puffs up his chest because he knows he doesn't measure up. With me now is the Daily Beast Peter Beinart. His latest article is called Bin Laden Killing Erases Democrats' Wimp Factor. His work also appears in Newsweek magazine. And he wrote the 2006 book, The Good Fight, Why Liberals and Only Liberals Can Win the War on Terror and Make America Great Again. Well, Peter, you turned out to be totally right when you wrote that book in 2006. So, yes, take the floor.
I appreciate it. Well, you know, part of it, I think, is actually that Obama question of the fight against al-Qaeda the centerpiece of his foreign policy, as opposed to Bush, who really was much more focused on Iraq. What Obama said during the 2008 campaign was the central threat comes from the Afghan-Pakistan theater, and that's where we're going to focus our efforts. And I think here you see the virtue of that strategy.
You know, as he was saying that, I was saying, of course it is. Why wouldn't we go after the guys who did 9/11? And I remember when Bush said this. Here, let's show a video of what the tough guy Bush was.
I want justice. And there's an old poster out west, as I recall, that said, wanted, dead or alive.
Yeah, except then he took 36 troops to Tora Bora. 36! There were thousands of American troops there requesting to go in, and he wouldn't put them in. And then he distracted us. I remember I got so mad at the Iraq War, mainly because I was saying he's in Afghanistan at the time. Then he later went to Pakistan. So why is it taking the country so long to recognize that the Republicans didn't care to fight al-Qaeda in Afghanistan? Instead, they distracted us to this massive other war that had nothing to do with it, and hence they're terrible at national security.
Well, you know, there's this long history which really goes back to Vietnam, and you have to remember that national security is really an extension of the culture war. And the biggest single problem, I think, that afflicts the Democratic on national security is that the Democratic Party has, since Vietnam, had often a difficult relationship with the U.S. military. And once the U.S. military, after Vietnam, started moving into the Republican Party en masse, that created a kind of structural problem. You're right, on policies, the truth of the matter is the Democratic Party is anything but pacifist. I mean, the Democrats are the ones who led us into Vietnam. As you said, Clinton also led military operations in Bosnia and Kosovo and Haiti. So in fact, the Democrats are not anything like a pacifist party, but it's a legacy of the culture war that really dates back to Vietnam.
You know, it's funny because if you go even further back, Truman, a Democrat, dropped 2 nukes.
And started the war in Korea.
Yeah, and so the idea that the Democrats are soft on national security is so preposterous, but it works. Let me show you the polls. So when it was McCain versus Obama, back in the 2008 election, of course, McCain had a 55-39 advantage with dealing with terrorism. And then in 2004, Bush had a 61-36 advantage over John Kerry. Look, Peter, the way I see it, they do this, they're amazing at marketing. So it's not like they've got any results, but they just market the hell out of it. Is there something to be learned there? I mean, and again, it's not purely about politics. It's so that we get the right policy, so the Democrats can say, hey, wait a minute, starting these giant wars is not effective. They've got to fight back against this marketing, otherwise we're headed in the wrong direction.
Well, I really think this is, just in pure political terms, this is the most important thing that's happened for the Democratic Party on national security since Vietnam, because it really is a validation of the central points that Obama was making in his foreign policy views. And in fact, I mean, it goes directly against some of the stereotypes of Democrats. This was not a multilateral operation. We didn't go to the UN. In fact, under international law, there are a lot of questions about going and assassinating someone on foreign soil. But Obama said he would do exactly this during the campaign. He said he would violate Pakistani sovereignty, not exactly the kind of thing of a guy who's who's consulting lawyers before he makes military operations. And he did it. It was a bold move, and it succeeded. So I think it really puts the lie to a lot of the stereotypes that are out there about the way Democrats conduct foreign policy.
All right, Peter Beinart of the Daily Beast, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.